Now with toe-up socks and cuff-down socks, you can try them on as you go. Either way, you can try them on. It doesn't matter. You just want to make sure you have it on a cord or a cord, which I mean here, that's long enough that you won't lose your stitches if you're worried about that. But what we're going to do today is do a long tail cast on. So what I'm going to do with this is just twist it around. Do you see how I have my hand here? I've got it like this on here. This is going to be a modified long tail. So you kind of make a slingshot with your hand. And this is not necessary. Like I said, you can use a cable cast on. You can look up a German twisted cast on. You can look up lots of different stuff. There's something called Jenny's Surprisingly Stretchy Cast On. All of those are great choices for socks. And if you're new to socks, that's something that you'll figure out, the thing that you prefer. If you're a veteran with socks, you've probably been skipping through this part of the video. But I'm just going to twist this here so that I have a first stitch there. And then what I'm going to do is take this and go under that part. And this part in the back is actually going to be my stitch. So it goes, oh. This one is going to lock that stitch in place. So we're going to try that a few more times so you can see. Go under here, pick up your stitch, and then lock it in place. Don't pull too hard. I put my finger in between these stitches to kind of measure. See how I'm measuring if they're too close together? This is kind of the bane of a lot of people's cast-ons, is that they are too tight. And that's just because you get excited. It's the beginning of the project. You haven't really relaxed into your stitches yet. And so it can be the tightest part of that project. So I'm just going to keep going until I hit 64. Okay, so now we've got 64 stitches on the needles, and you can see that all wrapped up here on this needle, it doesn't look super tidy. That is okay. If your stitches don't look amazing when you're doing your sock, blocking, and what I mean by blocking is just washing your socks. You don't have to actually have blockers. Blockers for socks are completely unnecessary. Your foot makes the best blockers, and what people mean by that is that it only matters what your socks look like on your feet. And for some people, it doesn't even matter what it looks like on their feet. They're just functional socks. I like to have them be pretty on my feet. This one has been blocked, and you can see those stitches are just beautiful and all evened out, and they don't necessarily look like that when I'm done with it. You'll see with this sock that when we're done with these, you'll be able to see the difference between a blocked and an unblocked sock. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our stitches here and we're going to join them in the round. Now, some people with if you're doing stripes with your yarn, what they'll do is they'll break up that rib. Now, I did not do that with this yarn. You can see here that there are little pearl bumps of these colors mixing together. And that's totally fine. If you don't want that, if you don't want the pearl bumps to interrupt your colors, I don't see them really when I look at my knitting. It's just knitting to me. But what you can do is when you're switching colors, you can do a round of knitting and then resume your rib. Now, there are lots of options for what ribbing choice you make. Obviously, I made a 1x1 here, and that's a very just standard choice. On my first pair of socks, I actually forgot what I had done and I did a 2x2 after I had already did a 1x1. It doesn't matter unless you find one that you really like. The only point to a rib for a sock is so that it stays where you put it. You're trying to get even more negative ease in this part of your sock so that it sticks to that part of your leg wherever it goes, right? So whichever one works for you, a 1x1 or a 2x2 or a 3x1, there are all kinds of combinations that you can make with that. And as we're looking at this, I'll show you. This is my first pair of socks, and this is what birthed the tread heavy heel. I wore through them so quickly because they were my only pair of knit socks, and I wore them constantly because I liked them so much. I've been ruined for bot socks completely. So I want my knit socks to hold up as long as they can, and so that I have less darning to do in the future. Now that we have our stitches cast on and we know what rib we want to do, for me, I'm going to do a 1x1, right? And this I'm going to weave in and cut off after I've finished my ribbing. Some people don't cut off their ends until after they've blocked their socks. I'll show you what I do with mine to be really comfortable with that. So we've got our cast on. Your working yarn, if you are right-handed and you work from right to left, right. I'm going to be working from this end of my needle around. So I'm working from right to left. This is how you're going to know what side of your project you're on, okay? Your working yarn is always going to be on the right side of your work. If you are working from right to left, which is what most right-handed knitters do. I am an English style knitter, a thrower, but even if you're a continental knitter, if you're working from right to left, your working yarn is always going to be on this right side of your work, and because you'll be pulling it over here with your finger to pull it through your stitches, right? So what I'm going to do is just do my knit and pull that through. And this part I do kind of tightly because I want my beginning of round to be not gappy. And then I'm going to do my purl stitch. You're going to go so that your needle comes through the front and pull that yarn through. And you're just going to keep going with your knit one, purl one, knit one, and then purl one. Now I'm going to just continue this knit one, purl one until we get around to the end. If you like a more, shall we say, a stickier ribbing to your leg, you'll want something like this. This is about 18 rows of ribbing. I often do 20 rows of ribbing. I just like that. I like a longer rib on my sock. Some people do only 15. That gets you about an inch if you have a similar gauge to myself. An inch of ribbing is totally fine. That's totally great. I like mine to be more about an inch and a half. So I do anywhere from 18 to 20 rounds of ribbing. And with this one, I did 18 because that's where my stripe ended. And so I was just moving into my stockinette portion there. So we're going to just keep going with this rib. And you get to decide. You get to decide what you like with socks and what you don't. Every sock is an experiment in my brain. It's every single one. I think, did I like that better than the last one? How can we make this even better? So here we are with our end of round. And at this point, I would encourage you to put a marker in, not because you need it right now. Your tail can kind of mark your beginning of round for a long time. You can keep that guy on there for a while. So that's going to be the beginning of my round there. And you can see why we want it to be really tight, because if I pull this, the only thing keeping it together here right now is this little piece of yarn right here. So I'm going to pull it tight at the beginning of the round for a while, maybe the first 4 rows, and then it'll be pretty secure. So like I said, I'm going to leave my tail out because I'm going to weave that tail into this ribbing once it's done. It's really easy to do. But what you can do if your cast on is twisted, and I'm going to twist my cast on real quick to show you. So here we go. As you can see, there's a twist here. So no matter what I do, if I flip my knitting around, it's still not going to be right. It's still not all going to be going the same direction. You want to make sure it's all pointed down, that all of your stitches on your needle are pointed down. But of course, these are pointed up. And at this point, if you find that your cast on is twisted, if you pull them all down, and we pull it all down, right? So I'm going to turn it, and oh my gosh, then I'm going to get this. What do? I'm just going to duck my needle under. And there. You can untwist that cast on, and you don't have to rip anything out. Your tail might be in a weird place. That's totally fine. Just put it wherever you want. This guy might be in a weird place. That's okay. If you have one strand of yarn that is in between your stitches, that is not going to affect your sock one iota, because we are literally doing that with every knit and purl stitch here, as we're pulling it between the stitches and having it go in between to change the direction of our yarn tail here, working yarn. I keep saying yarn tail, I mean working yarn, sorry. Okay, so I'm going to keep going with my rib here. It's going to be beautiful. Make sure all my stitches are pointed down. And once you get to that point, once you get to your second row and all of it's pointing down, you don't have to check it again. It's all going to be going the same direction. Even if this thing gets kind of pulled over this way, it doesn't matter. As you go around, it's going to right itself. If you have it twisted though, after that second round, it's going to be really, really hard to fix. So just be mindful of that. You can keep knitting and it'll still be knitting a twist of fabric. So I'm going to keep knitting until I get to the end of this dark gray stripe, and I will see you in a little bit when we move on to the leg. So we're here at the end of the 19th round, and you can see my white, or my light gray really, stripe doesn't start for a little bit. Now, because this is self-striping yarn, I haven't put in a beginning of round marker because I'm more interested in where these stripes begin and end than I am on exactly doing the rounds, especially on the leg. Now on the decreases and things like that, when we get to the toe and the gusset, that's just going to be, we're just going to put those where they should go. But when it comes to switching stitches here, I'm actually going to be waiting to start my stockinette until I get to the end of this dark gray moment here, and it looks like one more and we will be there. Okay, so then after that, I'm just going to be knitting in the round for as many inches as I want my leg to be long. Just knitting stockinette round and round and round until I get to my desired length. Now you can tell here that I really like a long leg sock on this one, so it's going to take me a minute. It's actually going to take me just over 2 repeats of this 8 stripe repeat to get to where I want my heel flap to start. But you don't have to knit your socks that long. This leg isn't that long. It's just a tad shorter, maybe 1.5 inches shorter, and those fit me just fine. I have this these couple pairs of boots that I like to make sure that they go, that the boot fits at least to here. But my son, he really likes a shorter leg sock, and so you can see I only did maybe 10 rounds here on the leg. This is actually a toe-up sock, so I did the heel, and that includes some Aya Partridge heel stuff here, and then I just did about 10 rounds and then did my cable cuffs up here. I love that she put that detail in there. So go ahead and finish your leg, however long or short you want it to be, and then in this next section, we'll talk about the heel flap and gusset. This is a shadow wrap heel. This is a short row heel. I love this heel. There are no gaps at all. You can see in the corners and in the stitches. When I've tried a German short row heel, I always get gaps on one side of the heel, and that just really irritates me. So that's the one we're going to go with for the toe-up option. If you want a short row heel option, you can pop on over to that video and do that, and then come back for the foot portion of this video, and we'll close it with the foot and the toe. So happy knitting for just a minute while we finish this leg, and I will see you in about 5.5 inches of leg.